This is Mark Starworth with another Salem Radio Boston Spotlight. My guest today is Dr. Duke Pesta from the Common Core presentation that'll be happening June 6th at the Four River Club. Good day, Dr. Pesta. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'd like to ask you, before we really get started, tell us a little bit about Dr. Pesta that we don't know that's on paper.
Well, I'm a 20-year university professor who's been involved in educational reform. And among other things, I've been working with standards myself in curriculum and helped create and implement a perfectly elective Bible class for school kids in Texas that is now available.
And how long has this been going on?
It's been going on for about 8 years now.
So tell me, is this a passion? Tell us a little bit about the Common Core and the passion of what brought this about.
Well, as a university professor, I noticed that by the time kids were getting to me at the university level, they had already been pretty seriously turned into anti-American kids. They were anti-free market, anti-capitalist. They believed that America was systematically destroying the planet environmentally. And whatever faith the kids had been raised with, the various faiths, they had seemed to have rejected it altogether. And so it seemed sad to me, and I realized that if I wanted to make a difference with these kids, I had to start getting involved at earlier grades. So I did get involved working with high schools and below, and through that came to come across Common Core and was really sort of shocked about what was coming down the road.
Now, how was this program received with the younger students?
Well, it's just being implemented now, but there's all sorts of evidence over the last year or so, particularly in states like New York and Kentucky and Florida, where Common Core was rolled out early, that particularly young kids are reacting very dramatically against it. Common Core requires at the lowest levels for kids to engage in the critical thinking that they're developmentally unable to do as yet. And that's a big problem. We have a number of clinical psychologists from across the country, psychiatrists, people who work with child development, who have signed a major petition urging schools and states to pull out of this, going so far as to call it a kind of child abuse to subject kids to the kind of things that Common Core is requiring of them at early ages.
Now, do colleges focus today more on international recruiting than our own homegrown recruiting or recruiting in our public schools?
No, not necessarily. We've reached the point where universities most universities are pretty much willing to take just about any student. One of the first things President Obama did when he became president was federalize the student loan program, which means the federal government now is writing checks to pretty much anyone who wants to go to college for any reason. So with the exception of places like Harvard and Yale and schools like that, pretty much we've reached the point where any kid with a high school diploma and basically a pulse can get a lot of money to go to school, whether that's good for the kid or not. And so that, I think, is where we sit. Universities recognize that there's a lot of money to be made by having butts in seats, so to speak. And so many of them are cashing in, and especially because the student loan money from the federal government is absolutely guaranteed. That's money that they can count on to fund other projects on campus, like building projects.
And I'm reading the flyer, and it says dangers and threats to the American liberty and education. Share with us a little bit about that.
Well, Common Core represents a myriad of different dangers and threats. The first and foremost being an acceleration in the amount of federal control over education. State and local school boards, working classrooms in local and rural areas are now going to be in very big trouble in terms of what kind of autonomy they have. Common Core cedes more to the federal government than any program that preceded it. And that's going to cause trouble for people trying to enact change in their own communities.
Is this a passion of yours to get this message out?
10 months ago I started doing this, and I never expected it to get this big. I've now given over 170 talks in 30 different states. So I guess you could call it a passion. It's kind of a reluctant passion. It's a lot of work. It's pretty grinding. But there aren't that many people talking about it, and most moms and dads in the country still don't really know what it is. And the people who implemented it and put it in our schools have not done a good job by design. They've not done a good job of explaining people what it is. The more people know about Common Core, the less they like it. And so it's become kind of a mission, I think, a necessary one.
What can we do to spread the word?
Well, the main thing we need right now is education. The fact is that I would argue less than maybe 10% of American moms and dads in the public schools really have any sense of what it is. Over these 170 or so talks across the country, I've maybe spoken to 60,000 people. That's a lot for one guy, but when we consider the scope of the American education system, it's not that many. I'm convinced that when moms and dads simply find out what it's about, they will take the reins, and that's already happening. They will take the reins and help fight it. So the first thing we have to do is awareness. Your radio shows like yours that are willing to let us go on and talk a little bit about it, advertise the talks we're going to give in your neck of the woods coming up, that's a place to start.
And do you have a website if someone would like to get more information about this?
Absolutely. I would urge your listeners to go to fpeusa.org. That's Frank Paul Edward, fpeusa.org, and click on the Common Core link. And you can reach us if you have any questions, but there's all sorts of free information, video testimony against Common Core, all sorts of documents and links that people can track down for free to begin to see what Common Core is all about.
Great. And I'd also like you to let us know about your event. I'd like to read it, but I would like to hear it from you, inviting us down to your event on Friday, June 6th.
And I thank you. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to give moms and dads a good overview. We're going to start with 3 parts to the talk. 1, what is Common Core? Who wrote it? Where did we get it? How did it get into our schools? Part 2 is a really good look at the standards themselves, particularly math and English, and why they don't work. And then finally, whenever you get a big federal program or a big federal takeover of something like education, you get all sorts of things besides education. There are all sorts of tentacles that wrap around it. So the third part of the talk will look at the consequences, the ramifications of Common Core.
Dr. Duke Pesta, I thank you for your time. Once again, I'd like you to give out your website information so if someone would like to go on and follow up with this, they would know where to go.
Yes, that is Freedom Project Education, FPEUSA.org. Click on the Common Core link, and you're going to get a wealth of information.
Dr. Duke Pesta, I thank you for your time. I know it's early. We thank you. But once again, Common Core, the dangers and threats to the American liberty and education, will be having a forum going on Friday, June 6th at 7 p.m. at the Four River Club, 16 Nevada Road in Quincy. This is a free event. There is free admission and limited seating, and donations will be at the door. Again, your speaker for the evening will be Dr. Duke Pesta. For more information, call John Fall at 857-498-1309. Sponsored by the South Shore chapter of the John Birch Society. Dr. Duke Pesta, I wish you a great and prosperous